Listen carefully. Not because this is loud, but because it's precise. If you found yourself here, not scrolling, not distracted, but still, then something is already happening. This moment didn't arrive by accident, and neither did you. Take a breath, because what's unfolding right now isn't random, it isn't rushed, and it isn't late. It's advancing. There are seasons when life feels silent. No signs, no reassurance, no movement you can point to and say, that's it. But silence does not mean absence. Some of the most intentional work happens where no one is watching, below the surface, in places you cannot measure yet. And if you're honest, you've felt it. That pressure, that quiet tension, that sense that something is forming even when nothing is visible. That's not anxiety. That's preparation. You've been asking questions you never used to ask, thinking thoughts you used to avoid, feeling pulled toward clarity instead of comfort. That's not coincidence. That's alignment. And alignment doesn't feel exciting at first. It feels uncomfortable, restrictive, lonely. Because growth doesn't announce itself with applause. It starts with separation. You've noticed it, haven't you? Certain conversations don't fit anymore. Certain habits feel heavy now. Certain environments drain you instead of energizing you. Not because you're better than anyone else, but because you're being positioned. And positioning requires distance. You cannot hear clearly in noise. You cannot see accurately in crowds. And you cannot step into what's next while clinging to what was. That's why the pause came first. This wasn't punishment. It was protection. Because what's ahead of you requires discernment, not impulse. Depth, not reaction. Strength that comes from restraint. You weren't slowed down. You were stabilized. Think back. There were moments you wanted movement so badly. You would have accepted anything that looked like progress. But if you had moved then, you would have carried old thinking into a new assignment. And that would have cost you more than waiting ever could. So the doors stayed closed. The answers stayed delayed. The clarity stayed just out of reach. Not to frustrate you, but to refine you. Refinement is quiet. It doesn't feel powerful while it's happening. It feels like patience you didn't ask for, like discipline you didn't plan, like obedience without applause. But this is where foundations are built. And foundations don't get celebrated. They get buried. You were being trained to stand without validation, to choose correctly without confirmation, to stay focused without reassurance. Because what's coming cannot be sustained by hype. It requires weight. And here's the truth most people never hear. Elevation exposes whatever isn't anchored. That's why the strengthening came before the lifting. That's why the solitude came before the recognition. That's why the silence came before the signal. You are being prepared to hold what you're about to receive. Now listen closely. Not everyone who wants more is ready for more. Because more responsibility demands more discipline. More clarity demands more accountability. More influence demands more restraint. And this season, this quiet, stretching, refining season, it wasn't about delay. It was about readiness. You're noticing details now, patterns you ignored before, warnings you used to dismiss. Your instincts are sharper. Your patience is deeper. Your discernment is stronger. That didn't happen overnight. That happened because you stayed. Because you didn't quit when nothing made sense. Because you didn't numb yourself when it got uncomfortable. Because you didn't abandon the process when it stopped being exciting. That matters. And now, things are shifting. Not loudly, not dramatically, but deliberately. You may feel a subtle urgency, a quiet confidence, a sense that you're standing on the edge of something real. That's not imagination. That's timing. Timing is precise. Not early. Not late. Exact. And when timing aligns with preparation, movement becomes inevitable. That's why things are starting to advance now. Opportunities will look different this time. They won't beg for your attention. They'll require your discernment. Decisions will carry weight now, not pressure, purpose. And you'll notice something else too. You're not rushing anymore. Because when you know who you are, you don't chase what isn't meant for you. This is where wisdom takes the lead. Not impulse, not fear, not comparison. Wisdom knows when to move and when to wait. And right now, you're not being told to run. You're being invited to step forward with intention. What you're building next isn't fragile. It's not temporary. And it's not based on emotion. It's rooted. Rooted in discipline. Rooted in clarity. Rooted in patience you earned. That's why it will last. You didn't lose time. You gained depth. And depth creates endurance. So, when things begin to open, and they will, you won't be overwhelmed. You'll be ready. Because readiness isn't about knowing everything. It's about being steady when you don't. This next chapter won't announce itself with noise. It will arrive with confidence, a calm knowing, a quiet authority, a sense of alignment that doesn't need explanation. And when it does, you'll recognize it, not because it's flashy, but because it fits. You've been shaped for this. The waiting wasn't wasted. The silence wasn't empty. The pressure wasn't pointless. It was all intentional. And now, you're not just hoping. You're ready. Because what's ahead of you is not something you have to chase. It's something that will meet you as you walk forward in alignment. Calm, focused, prepared. So don't rush, don't doubt, and don't look back. You're not behind. You're advancing. Advancing doesn't always look like motion. Sometimes it looks like restraint, like saying no when the old version of you would have said yes, like staying quiet when you finally have the words to react. That's growth most people never recognize, because it doesn't announce itself. But make no mistake, momentum is building. There's a difference between standing still and standing firm. And right now, you're standing on something solid. Your values are clearer. Your tolerance for chaos is lower. Your need for approval has faded. Those aren't losses. Those are upgrades. You've outgrown certain patterns, not because they were evil, but because they were incomplete. They belong to a version of you that survived, not the version that's meant to lead. And survival teaches speed, but leadership teaches patience. This is why things feel slower now, not because life stalled, but because you're being taught to move with intention. Quick decisions build stories, but deliberate decisions build legacies. You're no longer chasing relief. You're choosing alignment. And alignment takes courage, because it means you're willing to disappoint others, to remain honest with yourself. That's not selfish. That's mature. There will be moments ahead where the old voice returns, the one that says, "You should be further by now. Others are passing you. You missed your window." That voice is lying, because progress isn't measured by comparison. It's measured by consistency. And you've been consistent in the ways that matter. You stayed when it got uncomfortable. You reflected instead of reacting. You listened instead of numbing. Most people skip those steps. That's why they repeat the same chapters, with different faces, different places, different excuses. But you broke the loop. And breaking cycles doesn't feel victorious at first. It feels lonely. It feels uncertain. It feels like walking forward without applause. But it also feels clean, like finally telling the truth to yourself. The future you're walking toward doesn't need you frantic. It needs you focused, because what's coming will test your boundaries, not your talent. It will test your discipline, not your desire. And you've been quietly training for that. Soon, you'll notice something subtle but undeniable. You won't need to explain yourself as much. Not because people suddenly understand, but because you no longer require permission. Clarity has a way of simplifying everything. The doors that open next won't swing wide. They'll open just enough for you to step through, and you'll recognize them not by excitement, but by peace, because chaos never accompanies the right timing. You're not late to your life. You arrived exactly when you were supposed to, with the awareness you needed, the strength you earned, and the discernment you fought for. So keep walking, even when progress feels invisible, even when the world feels loud, even when the outcome isn't clear yet. Because advancement isn't about speed, it's about direction, and your direction is true.